Welcome to a Junior VC Unfiltered. My name is Mazin, and I'll be your host today. And I have with me Bhumika, Manshi, and Shali to take us through Urban Company's journey. Bhumika, why did we choose to write about Urban Company this week?
Mazen, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen a very large number of companies raising funding and reaching $1 billion valuation, right? And with COVID in the picture, most of us on this group have been living or are living under lockdown. Urban Company's relevance has grown massively in this time, and as has the company. We were just talking about how many of us in this group itself ended up becoming first-time customers to the company during this period. And of course, Urban Company has recently raised fresh capital last month and is now a unicorn. Now is as good a time as ever to talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people have become first-time users. And Manshi, can you actually take us back to the beginning and talk about the origin of Urban Company? And can you tell us a bit about their business model?
Sure, Mazen. So, Urban Company was founded in around 2014. The founders, Varun Ketan and Abhiraj Bhal, were actually batchmates at IIT Kanpur. The entrepreneurship bug had already bit them, and while they were overseas working at a management consulting firm, they started discussing about how startups work, what startups actually are, and they decided to come back to India. In India, their first venture was a company called Cinema Box, which was actually a movie streaming company, wherein they were planning on showing these movies on Wi-Fi enabled long journeys on buses, planes, and trains. But they soon realized that while this was a great lifestyle business, it wasn't a very life-changing one. So they dropped that idea. Meanwhile, they'd also met Raghav Chandra, who was a CS major from UC Berkeley. He was interning at Twitter, and he quit his internship and had founded buggy.com, which was a ride sharing platform. He was more of a CS guy, and he was not really interested in the operational side of things. And this was a ride hailing startup which required massive operational scaling. So he decided to shut that venture. But all three of them had already connected, and they decided to form a company together. In their brainstorming sessions, they were looking for these sectors in India which were not yet disrupted by large technological companies. This was 2014, back when Flipkart and Ola were gaining massive traction, and they were increasing largely. So that's when they discovered the home services industry, which was highly disorganized, and they decided to give it a shot. This is where Urban Clap comes in. They named it Urban Clap initially because they wanted to change the urban consumer's life in a clap, which means like in a second. So they decided to go ahead with Urban Clap here. Then when they were discussing how to actually formulate this, how to actually go about organizing this sector, they started looking at two different models basically. One catered to the blue collared workers, and the second one catered to the white collared workers. The blue collared workers, by here I mean people like plumbers and electricians, people who we need to cover our daily services for. And by the white collar services, we mean the interior designers and the wedding photographers. For the blue collar services, it was slightly simpler. They had a full stack model which they were working with, wherein it's like how when you place an order on Swiggy or Zomato, you can just place an order for a food item, a commodity. Here you could place an order for a service. So they revolutionized the industry that way by going with a mobile first approach and by enabling customers to simply order a service at their leisure. For the white collar industry, they had a slightly more evolved model. They created a custom matchmaking algorithm in-house, wherein they were, once you input your needs into the app, they were matching you with a list of potential customers, keeping in mind your budget constraints and other criteria. This model was slightly more convoluted because as they realized over time, they did not have a full control over the entire process. This was the connect model. Eventually, they decided to go forward with the full stack model because it was a more end-to-end process, more seamless. It was also over a shorter duration, and there were high purchases made. So this is what went forward, and this is how they came about creating the company that is Urban Clap.
It's a rather remarkable story. Bhumika, can you talk a bit about the unit economics and how they went from there to scaling through to 2020?
Sure, Mazen. So now we've extensively mentioned in our piece that the birth of urban company happened as a result of the focus into bringing order into a highly disorganized market, and that has been a continued theme in a lot of the startups that we've covered in our newsletters. But urban company was also looking at this problem in another manner. This wasn't just another opportunity to play middleman and monetize. It wanted to give back some control to the local professionals who were currently taking home only around 20% of the value of the services they were providing. The norm, at least back in 2015, 2016, was that the average beautician would take home only 20% of the earnings, while parlors or salon chains would keep the other 80%. And not without good reason, of course. Like, there was a lot of expenditure on salon infrastructure and operations, but this was more or less the industry standard. Now, urban companies' monetizing strategy was to take a cut from each order as commission, and this number varied between 10 and 20%. So it had given the local professional the choice to make an income by finding an alternative channel of business, and perhaps even tripling or quadrupling their earnings if they continued servicing the same number of customers in the same time period. So this also presented, the partners some sort of flexibility. The app would basically send them a service request, and after masking the customer details, the service partner could choose to whether respond to the demand or not. So being an urban company service professional did not mean that you only had access to a broader market and this flexibility, but you were also offered insurance and had easier access to credit as well. So considering all of these factors, it was safe to say that the incentives for becoming a service professional as a partner, so those were already in place, and all that had to be done was provide a smooth and straightforward onboarding experience for anybody who wanted to join their ever-growing community. And they relied majorly on online advertising and word of mouth to grow their base. Talking about the other leg of the platform, which was the service receivers leg, urban company depended largely on advertisement here as well. They were acquiring new customers through PPC, marketing and channels like YouTube. And initially, the cost to acquire one new customer was calculated to be around 800 rupees. And within a year, this was brought down to under 400. So assuming that their average ticket size was 1200 rupees, with the commission ranging between 10 and 20% on each order, the company needed roughly 2 transactions from every customer to break even on this leg of operations. So those were good numbers for a company just starting out. And 2015 was the year they raised both their Series A and B funding, and within 5 months of each other, they backed, I think, 10 and 25 million in each of those rounds, respectively. So 2015 ended well, but 2016 was not kind to the home services industry as a whole. Many startups had ended up burning large amounts of cash in an attempt to win the market. But once this hyper-local services bubble burst, they ended up broke and eventually had to shut shop. So urban companies' financials didn't look so great for the year either. They had made just around 80 lakh rupees from commissions, and the bottom line though was still that they had survived the crisis, and they were now focusing on trying to diversify their offerings to encompass the entire array of the needs of an urban consumer. So they were looking to partner with a couple of prevalent startups. In the year 2016, I think they acquired Handy Homes, which was the leader in the appliance repair segment, and Good Services, which had a tech stack that urban company were interested in. And this was a win-win situation because things were grim as a whole in the year. And if smaller home services startups were the sinking ships of the time, acquisition was the lifeboat. So, and just like everything else, the crisis also passed. By 2017, I think Urban Company raised their Series C. They had a 10K strong community. Things were looking lively again. And this is when they had, mentally begun preparation for taking their venture abroad. And as expected, sort of in April 2018, they started operations in Dubai. So Dubai was a consumer-heavy market, and it was largely untouched when it came to online at-home service providers. And Dubai was a success, and in came Series D, $50 million this time. And I think Urban Company ended fiscal year 18 with 1.2 million orders placed and a customer repeat rate of 75%. So with the Dubai move doing so well, they came to Abu Dhabi in 2019, and with the presence of in the presence of two cities in UAE, they targeted twice the growth month on month, and it seemed like everything was going with them. Within 8 months, of their Series D, they announced that they raised 75 million in their Series E, which took their valuation from around 480 million to I think 930, just about doubling it or so. This was a stage, where a lot of attention was on them and on their business model, and it was as good a time as any for some internal examination and reflection. So, as Manshi spoke about the connector and the full stack model, they came to realize that they were trying, to be everything for everyone. And if there's one thing we love to remind people on this podcast is that that doesn't work for so long. So Urban Company's connector model was underperforming, and they realized that, their strengths were their fleet of service professionals and their standardized procedures and pricing, which were all parts of their full stack model. And like Manshi had mentioned, in 2019, they chose to, they made a conscious decision to pivot and transition to an entirely full stack model. And they retired the connector model and any avenue of business that could make, the transition with them.
Quite the journey. And yeah, definitely lines that we like to remind everyone of. Love them. Shelly, so how did Urban Company deal with the pandemic, and what happened, and what does the future look like for them going forward?
Yeah, sure, Nazim. As you know, when the pandemic hit last year, due to the complete lockdown that was placed in March, by April, Urban Company had close to zero revenues. Profitability seemed very far away, and UC professionals had nowhere to go because people wouldn't let any stranger come into their house performing services which were non-essential at that point of time. But I think Urban Company used this lockdown period to upskill itself in a number of ways. First of all, it tried to position itself as a safe alternative. It collaborated with celebrities to build trust in consumers. It spent heavily on advertising and putting ads everywhere on YouTube and other channels. But now it seemed like after being in the game for 6 years, it was back to square one, trying to build that trust with the consumers. What they did is they used a three-pronged approach. They called it Mission Shakti. And under that, they divided it into three parts: Project Kavach, Project Vishwas, and Project Josh. This was primarily towards helping the gig workers, basically. So, for example, Project Kavach focused on making these services safe in place. The service professionals were supposed to conduct daily temperature checks, monitor health, and were provided PPE kits, sanitizing tools. They also innovated some of their techniques. For example, they use some products which are not which are not for single use in general, but due to the pandemic and people's concerns about safety, they started using these new types of products. Then they also help the service professionals to maintain their liquidity when the business was not as good, and so they disbursed about 11 crore rupees in which were interest fee given to these service professionals. They also planned health insurance for these service professionals, which is not something that generally the gig economy employers do. Then coming back to doing this for continuously for a few months, by November it was almost on a path to grow 2x compared to the last year's business. So I think urban company used this time of lockdown in upskilling its workers, as well as helping its company to grow back to the level that it was growing in 2020. Now people have actually started using this service again as a safe alternative. Looking at the future of urban company, I think it has been continuously evolving, including its name. It started with the name Urban Clap. Now, since it has expanded into global territories and has provided a lot more services, uh, it changes names to Urban Company. So, growing from horizontal to vertical to full stack. Now, I think it in India it's uniquely positioned because it is trying to formalize a market that has inherently been informal all throughout the history. So looking at what are urban companies plans for the coming time, I think there are 3 or 4 key areas where they are working before heading for their IPO, maybe in next 2-3 years. So one is that generating a new revenue stream by selling private label products in the beauty segment. So private label is a very lucrative space for a lot of companies because they get a lot of margin. You have control on your supply of products and quality, and of course cost. Then secondly, they are trying to go deeper in each category and building category specific product features. For example, if you hire a technician for repairing your AC, you would want in an offline market to, if there is any problem, you would want that same person to come and visit because he knows what had happened in the last visit. So that feature they are trying to build in their app specifically for the home repair business. Similarly, for beauty segment, they are trying to expand. They are trying to share more beauty regimen recommendations, making more customized features for these customers. Uh, then next, I think the biggest goal, which is a bit ambitious, but right now they have seen positive track on that, is that creating 1 million micro entrepreneurs in the coming 4 to 5 years. So they have partnered with National Skill and Development Council, and under that partnership, they NSDC and Skill India Mission, they provide certificates to these training professionals. So right now, I think they have close to 40,000 service professionals, out of which 35,000 are in India itself. And so they are looking to be a sort of LinkedIn for blue collar jobs by creating this largest workforce database. So they are trying to create a flywheel effect where they are creating a lot of supply and generating demand at the same time. So in the later years, we could see that UC is actually generating employment for other companies as well through its certified professionals. So I think looking at its future, it has presence in all tier 1 cities and 22 tier 2 cities. So and with in India's ever growing urban population, I think India urban company has a very lucrative market to go to. And of course, the tailwinds of internet adoption in tier 2 and tier 3 cities will definitely help urban company meet its own goals and challenges. So yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, certainly sounds like Urban Company has a bright future ahead of them, and with an IPO on the horizon, look out for where they're going to go. Thank you so much for tuning in to a Junior VC Unfiltered. We hope you enjoyed the episode. We will see you next week.